As you've probably seen, planning permission has been granted for a 3-storey mosque in the Trocadero Centre in Piccadilly in London. No one told me about this, nobody notified me, nobody asked for my help, and God forbid anyone would have said, please help us resist this, and by the way, we will contribute towards the out-of-pocket expenses of doing so. No one told me, I'm not psychic, I didn't know about it, I would like to have opposed it, but I couldn't have because I didn't know, so I didn't. And as a result, planning permission was granted for this mosque application. Now what I want to talk about, having got that off my chest, what I want to talk about is what was granted, what got planning permission, what it means, what's in store in the future, and what we should do about it. So if you let me go here, hold on, that is the Westminster Council's planning page, and that is not the recent application that got planning permission. That is the 2020 planning permission, which I did oppose and which I defeated. They withdrew their application, I suspect because they were told they were unlikely to get planning permission. Now, 2020, use of upper and lower basements and ground floor as a place of worship and community centre. It is always a community centre. What I want to point out is just look at the number of comments. Nearly 9,000, and objections 2,700, supporting 6,100. If I go there, that is the planning officer's report, which went into more detail. The applicants withdrew their application at the last minute. Number of objections 2,900, number in support 6,110, and total number of respondents from within the city of Westminster. That's the crucial number, 958. That's why I think I can take credit, because I think a lot of those letters in support probably came from all over the country. Maybe some of them came from all over the world. And what I focused on was what is necessary to focus on, and that is enabling people who live within the borough to register their views, to say what they think about it. The planning system requires it, it functions on the back of that, it is set up in order to do that, and that's one of the things that I help people to do. And it is irrelevant whether sometimes people are tempted to set up websites asking people to object from all over the country, all over the world. That is harmful. That tends to make it a lot more likely that planning permission gets granted. It is counterproductive. What you need to do is to get people within the borough to comment. It's a bit like if I were to write a letter to President Biden complaining about his agricultural policy or about American education policy, he'd simply say, well, you don't count, you don't vote. And I guess my letter would go in the bin. It's a similar thing with planning applications. People in the borough and their views are what counts. That's what I got up last time, and I suspect that most of those 958 representations from people within the borough, I suspect that they were objections, and that is why I think that's why I take credit for having defeated that one in 2020. Okay, fast forward 3 years. The same application, use of upper and lower basements and ground floor as a place of worship and community centre. And what you see here is comments received 125, objections 1. Okay, so go back there. In 3 years ago, objections 3,000. Okay, so what's that? 1/30 of 1% of the objections this time. One objection. Although I can't find it on the council's webpage. And letters in support 119. I think we can call that apathy. Now, what I noticed is that last time I had to swim underwater to get away from people constantly telling me about this application. And had I been notified about it and was I going to help, which I was going to help, I was involved in it, including people who were working pretty hard to try and inveigle me into doing the legwork for a campaign that they could set up to self-promote. And it's a bit annoying that, but at least the good side is it shows there's a market for it. There's a wave of public opinion that people want to ride. I think we can say that wave of public opinion didn't exist this time. Otherwise, someone would have said to me, hey, there's this application, you stopped it last time, can you stop it this time? No one did. And in case you're thinking that, hold on, the council did it on the quiet this time. Well, no, the total consulted is 424. Last time total consulted was 357. So if anything, more people were consulted this time. That's having a letter written to them saying this application has been submitted. So again, I think we can safely say that this time that was apathy. What I have had is a few people complaining about it after the event, and I want to show you a couple of YouTube versions of this, people commenting on YouTube. And so here, let's go to this one. It's a video by Katie Hopkins. I want to play you a couple of minutes of this because I think it is interesting. I disagree with it, but it's interesting. And so, well, let me play this couple of minutes now.
Britain, where we are finding out there is going to be a mega mosque at the Trocadero in Piccadilly, so in the heart of the entertainment centre of the West End. A gentleman called Asif Aziz, who's a billionaire, is going to build a 3-storey mosque in one of central London's most famous entertainment complexes, the Trocadero. There was pushback to this in 2020, so clearly those plans were just quietly put onto a shelf. Meanwhile, whatever has gone on in the last 3 years now means that Mr. Aziz, the billionaire, has come out with permission, is going to put a mosque there. There are a few questions, of course, aren't there? Like, why would you put a mosque in the centre of an entertainment district? Perhaps if you are LGBT and you enjoy being in Soho, maybe you would want to question why a mosque right next door to Soho would be a good idea. And perhaps there's also some questions around Mr. Aziz himself. He was known as Britain's meanest landlord at the height of the COVID lockdowns after threatening West End tenants, including chains like Cafe Concerto, with winding up petitions if they did not pay their rent on time. Also, I do wonder whether billionaire Asif Aziz is quite the bastion of morality that he's making himself out to be. In 2017, in the High Court, he argued that his estranged wife was not entitled to his then estimated 1.1 billion fortune, as they faked a marriage certificate in Malawi in order to bring an adopted child to the UK. Yeah, sounds like a really good guy and another brilliant planning decision by Westminster Council.
Now, my observation on that is I don't care if fundamentally if this mosque is to be in the centre of an entertainment district. And I don't think it's relevant that he's a mean landlord. I don't think it's relevant whether he's a bastion of morality. He could be hubby of the year for all I care. What matters, none of that matters. What matters is the demographic onslaught, which then requires a mosque in order to service the foreign population, the non-English population, and that massive, that huge tide of numbers which is threatening us, the English, having our own homeland in England. It's the only one we've got. We are entitled to it. And that demographic incursion, that tide, that is the problem. The mosque is a symptom of it. And where it is in the entertainment district or who applies for it, that's a detail to the symptom of the problem. I don't think that is relevant. Now the next one I want to play is this one from Simon Webb. And well, I'll just play it and then I'll make my comments.
This district is traditionally a bright, garish and slightly risque place, with cinemas and theatres at the centre and strip joints and prostitutes at the edge. Those visiting Piccadilly Circus, Leicester Square and Soho know what they're going to see. It strikes me that a huge mosque right in the middle of the West End nightlife is sure to have some kind of effect.
Again, I don't think it matters that the location is a garish and slightly risque place. I don't think it matters that it's near West End nightlife. What matters is the tide of incursion against us, the English, having our own homeland. That is the underlying problem. That is what needs to be confronted. That is the ugly truth that needs to be addressed. So following on from that, where does that mean we are? Well, the first thing I think that means is that the counter-jihad has failed. It is defunct. Give it up, People are not paying attention. Talk about radical Islam, Islamism, extremist Islam. People are tired of hearing that. The question is not doctrine. The question, unfortunately, is people and numbers. Things have gone too far for people to have interest in that kind of language, those kind of quibbles. It's the demographic incursion from all sides. Now, the second thing is that I think this represents a retreat from London. It is not the defeat. It is not people rolling over, surrendering and showing their throats to the enemy. This is people making a retreat and retrenching and hunkering down, perhaps waiting for the enemy to exhaust itself, waiting for conditions to change before people do anything. But we have, psychologically, I think, we have retreated from London, particularly, and I think that's particularly so given the census numbers from, I think, January 2021. I think the month is January, so about 2.5 years ago, where the white British population was about 36.8% of Londoners. I imagine it's a couple of percent lower now. So I think that is people saying we are just over a third and declining. So we, in our minds, we are going to give up London temporarily. I don't think that can be done permanently, because you can't lose London. If London turns to chaos, then England, Britain turns to chaos. Unlike in France, a regime, a system, a government can lose control of Paris but still keep control of France. You can't do that with London, because London is such a major, such a much bigger hub, so much more important in the scheme of things. And the significance of that is that London will need to be recovered. I think people understand that. I think people have a dim sense of that. People are simply not standing up at the moment because they don't see other people standing up. But that will change after a breakdown and a hard separation, a formalised separation of populations along ethnic lines, which I think will follow on from a breakdown of the system and a breakdown of the welfare state, which I think is unavoidable. And then when that happens, I think huge, very densely populated areas of London will need to be retaken, possibly siege by siege, after things have broken down. Now, that's an ugly prospect. There are plenty of things that can go wrong in a situation like that. That's why I think it's important to do what so many people are not doing, which is thinking out, what should we do about this? Now, I don't think we should revert to civil war. I don't think that will work. I think we are better off waiting for the breakdown to happen. I think we have no choice but to wait for the breakdown to happen. Now, I say that partly in response to a criticism I received to one of my videos recently, where someone said that all I'm saying is do nothing, wait for things to break down and hope for the best. No, I certainly don't hope for the best. That's why I'm trying to call for people to plan out what we should do. I simply don't think it will work to use force now. All you'll do is get yourself into trouble. Your feet won't touch the ground. It won't accomplish anything, because people don't have the mind to fight at the moment. People are not in the mind to fight back. You look at the 2023 local elections. Every party to the right of the Tory party, any vaguely patriotic party, let alone any nationalist party, got wiped out. 0 seats, nothing, right back to square one. The recent by-elections, where the results came out this morning, the Reform Party and the Reclaim Party, they all lost their deposits. I think Lawrence Fox got 2.3% of the vote and lost his 500 quid deposit. The main effect of that vote for any sort of patriotic party was the loss of 500 quid, because there is not a market for nationalist or patriotic politics at the moment. Now, that is not a permanent state. I think that there is a kind of apathy, but that is not surrender. I think that is people not giving up on themselves or a sense of a homeland. I think that is people giving up on the system, on the political system. I think people are prepared to go along with the system for now, as long as the form is standing up and as long as the substance remains. And so by the form I mean the institutions, parliament, a police force, a local authority, and the substance of government being government management of the economy, and particularly management of the welfare state. Free stuff, payouts. As long as the free stuff keeps coming, I think people will continue to obey the forms of the state. And I think you can see evidence of that in what has happened with the Trocadero. It has not registered with people. And yes, at these recent by-elections and at local government elections earlier this year, what it was about was government payouts, government welfare, waiting lists on the NHS, fuel bill, subsidies, management of the economy, management of mortgage payments. That's what people were voting about. Government management of the economy, government management of the welfare state. That's what mattered to people. When that goes down, then I think the state system will go down. Then we have an opportunity. And that opportunity will be to take back our homeland for ourselves in a way that is reasonably peaceful, that is orderly and reasonably consensual. In the meantime, I think people are simply focusing on survival. They're putting survival higher than civilization. I think that is not impressive. It looks shameful to me at the moment, but I guess that's just human nature, and maybe it's better that people are not always going around standing on principle at every opportunity. But that is certainly why I say, that's why I say that I don't think we can accomplish anything whilst the system is still standing up. If and when the system breaks down, i.e. the welfare state breaking down, then I think the system, the state itself, will break down, and then I think that will mean two crucial things. And those things are, firstly, free association, or freedom of association, and secondly, a heavy dose of reality, forcing us to confront the reality of our lives directly, without this fiction of an all-protecting cradle-to-grave state. When you have those two things, freedom of association plus having to confront reality and deal with it for yourself, then I think people will take very tough-minded, very clear-headed decisions. And I think in those circumstances, I think that the ethnic native English, we will say that we don't feel confident to trust large numbers of hostile foreign populations with our sense of security and safety. So I don't really think we have any choice but to wait for the system to break down. I don't think we can accomplish anything in the meantime. Well, all the evidence is showing we can't accomplish anything in the meantime, certainly not via political routes. I don't think resorting to violence will have any effect either. You shouldn't do that. You just get yourself in trouble. There's no point. To illustrate what I'm saying, just imagine that Rishi Sunak tomorrow suddenly wakes up and says, you know what, I think we need to reclaim England for the English as the English homeland, and we need a widespread policy of mass repatriations in order to accomplish this. And let's suppose every MP, every minister, every pressure group agreed with him about that and said, yes, quite right, Prime Minister, let's repatriate tens of millions of people. What would they do? They'd have to send in the army to accomplish that throughout the whole of London. Imagine the Trocadero then. Imagine trying to retake the army trying to retake the Trocadero in those circumstances. How peaceful do you think that's likely to be? What about every other foreign-owned, foreign-controlled institution throughout London? What about every house, every cupboard, every attic, every crawl space, every wardrobe? What about the young soldiers doing it, knowing that when they look under a bed to see if someone's hiding there, that they need to take out in order to repatriate them, knowing that person might have some fertilizer, IED, strapped to themselves. And what if those soldiers say, actually, I didn't sign up to do this, to pick on civilians. That's not why I wanted to be a soldier. So this idea that all we need to do is elect the right politicians with good motives, and they'll sort it out, that is fantasy. I don't think we have any alternative but to wait for the system to break down, which I think is inevitable. And when that happens, I think freedom of association will lead to hard separation, because freedom of association includes freedom of non-association, freedom not to associate with people you don't want to associate with. As I said, a bit like in your living room, you can invite who you want in, you can eject who you don't want. in there. If you have freedom of association and if people are confronted with reality, then I think English populations will want to mix with other English populations and will be very, very sceptical of entrusting their safety, of sharing their safety with hostile foreign populations. And I think you will see populations naturally separate themselves out on quite hard formal lines, along ethnic lines, but doing it formally, officially. And that is, I think that is 80% of the job, of the work, or the heavy lifting of any policy of repatriation. And then probably I think it's likely, as I've said before, well, I think the remaining 20% will be the easy bit. That will be easy to accomplish. That will not require a lot of violence, a lot of atrocity, a great deal of physical force, especially because I think the conditions in those foreign inhabited, foreign settled areas, the conditions in those areas will plummet fast. And the inhabitants of those areas will actually find it much more attractive to return to their ancestral homelands, where they're more welcome, more free, they have more opportunity, conditions are better, and they're not trying to subsist in some multicultural foreign semi-war zone, which is what I think that those areas are likely to become. And I think that will enable us to take back places like London street by street without war. So what has changed as a result of this application? Well, I think the Trocadero getting planning permission, it is a really unpleasant, a dismal sign, but I think it is not a reason for people to give up. It is not a reason to lose heart, because I think the only thing really that has changed with this planning permission is that the lead up to the breakdown that I'm talking about has become a tiny bit darker and perhaps a bit crueler than it would otherwise have been. I still think we are on the same trajectory, the same journey. Thank you.